On board Air Force One, the plane of the U.S. President, the atmosphere is cheerful to relaxed. The airplane has already descending on Berlin with hand-picked press representatives from the Washington Post, the New York Times and the television stations NBC and CNN. The White House Chief of Staff has announced a programmatic speech for today against the historic backdrop of the Brandenburg Gate. The grandstand at the Brandenburg Gate is filled to the last seat. For the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, it is his 72nd visit to Berlin. He had previously visited Germany 4 times, the first time in 1978 before his inauguration. The armored presidential limousine which arrived in Berlin 3 days ago, is ready, along with Secret Service support vehicles and a police escort. At the end of the red carpet, Chancellor Helmut Kohl and his wife Hannelore and the governing mayor of Berlin will welcome their American guest of state. In the approach control office of the Berlin Tower, the approach controllers have already spotted Air Force One on their screens. It is now preparing to land at Berlin-Tegel Airport. All other landings have been postponed for safety reasons. Police tanks have taken up positions on the airport grounds and snipers are positioned on the roofs of the airport buildings. On this early summer's day, the entire West Berlin district is at security level 1+. Barricades were set up along the president's planned route. A large number of police officers also guarded the streets. Schools in Berlin were closed and many American-born students, especially those at the John F. Kennedy School in Zehlendorf, are eagerly awaiting the president's arrival. They wave American flags and there is a kind of festival atmosphere in many places along the route. In just a few minutes, Air Force One will touch down at Berlin-Tegel Airport. This is the start of the official visit program. The entire airport has been hermetically sealed off. All airport employees have been subjected to security checks. Apart from them, only officials from the federal government and the Berlin Senate, as well as invited guests. Members of the American Armed Forces stationed in West Berlin are on the airport grounds. They want to give the president a warm welcome. To Alexander's surprise, checkpoints have been set up in Berlin-Kreuzberg. Sarah believes that they should prevent the 71 Kreuzberg chaos and rioters from infiltrating unhindered in advance. For this purpose, Berlin's Fun Guerrilla has provided many Kreuzberg households with permits. With their help, it should be easier to enter and leave Berlin-Kreuzberg. It says in black and white, passage between West Berlin and the Free Republic of Kreuzberg. Please tick or fill in as appropriate. Name, address, criminal record. Activity exercised, either Berliner, tourist. Member of the press, anti-Berliner, troublemaker or other. Date of entry and exit, time, length of stay in Berlin-Kreuzberg. So 36 hours, days, weeks, years or a lifetime. What you are carrying. Firearms, radios, ammunition, small children or anything else. We wish you a pleasant stay. The Senate of Berlin greets the rest of the world. Below is space for the stamp of the issuing authority. Just before the presidential convoy passes the victory column and enthusiastic Berliners wave to Ronald Reagan, the State Department makes a last attempt to change the president's mind by telephone. When the red car phone rings, Reagan is handed the receiver. Yes, this is Ronald Reagan. Mr. President, we apologize for the intrusion. We have one final suggestion to make. And that is, please remove the offending words from your speech. Stay politically correct and refrain from calling for the demolition of the wall. You know my answer, no and no again. Avoid anything that might provoke the Soviet Union. You demand that I speak after the evil empire. Never, I will not delete a sentence from my speech, on the contrary. Only from a position of strength with all my Star Wars plans will there be serious disarmament talks. There is no way around it. Mr. President, please excuse any inconvenience. God bless you. As Reagan begins his long-awaited speech in front of the Brandenburg Gate, everyone present applauds and rises from their seats. Among them are Peter Lenz, the federal government commissioner of Berlin, federal chancellor Helmut Kohl and the governing mayor of Berlin. The enthusiastic crowd in front of the grandstand wave American flags. Many Berliners cheered the U.S. president on his way to the Brandenburg Gate. They are now watching the live broadcast on their television screens with great interest. Priest Klitsch and his guests in the parish hall listened intently to what Ronald Reagan had to say. The tribune, decorated with flowers, is protected by bulletproof glass. Years before, Reagan had been assassinated. It is precisely in this situation that Ronald Reagan wants to show his inner composure, not to disappoint fans and audience. He has enough Hollywood experience to know instinctively that all the cameras are on him at this moment. He can't afford to make a mistake. And yet this time everything is different than in all the westerns before. Perhaps this will be the role of his life, albeit an unscripted one. Certainly there are no repetitions. Each take is unique and has to be right the first time. All scenes, without exception, are set in the harsh reality, in real life. Ronald Reagan is pushed into the limousine by his bodyguards. At first everyone thinks the president is unharmed. But when Secret Service agent Jerry Parr discovers blood on the president's jacket, doubts arise. The 70-year-old president is now breathing much more breathless. He gasps for air. The presidential limousine arrives at the emergency room of George Washington University Hospital. Surprised hospital staff have no word that the president was shot. Initially he is treated for a heart attack, until it is discovered that he has sustained a puncture wound in the side of the lung. Nancy Reagan, the First Lady, never leaves his side. Multiple broken ribs are diagnosed. The president was pushed into the car with full force to save his life. Ronald Reagan knows such rude treatments from countless westerns, where it mostly went off lightly. The treating doctor discovers the gunshot wound and thus the bullet hole. According to the caliber used, this is tiny. The result is severe internal bleeding and the president has to undergo emergency surgery. "Honey, I guess I forgot to duck in time," Ronald Reagan remarked to his wife, Nancy. "Yes, darling, this time you play your part so perfectly that I have goosebumps again." "Thank you, Nancy." 80 Shortly thereafter, the president is wheeled into the operating room and is to be put under anesthetic. Ronald Reagan takes a last look around the operating room. He surveys the medical community around him. "Please tell me you are all Republicans." The chief physician then calms him down. "Mr. President, today we are all Republicans at heart today," whereupon the breathing mask is placed over his face. Courage and determination. Ronald Reagan is confident in his mission and overwhelmed by the warm welcome. He particularly appreciates the backdrop of the Brandenburg Gate. Stepping out of his presidential limousine, he remembers this iconic place. Christopher McLaren sits in the first row of spectators. He is an American civil servant from Berlin and listens intently to Reagan's words. He knows very well that many U.S. presidents visited Berlin before Reagan, starting with Truman, Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. Almost without exception, all the presidents have used this political stage to find symbolic words. For McLaren, there is no question that Reagan will join this tradition. "Many thanks, Mr. Federal Chancellor, Mr. Governing Mayor, ladies and gentlemen," Ronald Reagan begins his speech. Exactly 24 years ago, President John F. Kennedy visited Berlin and spoke to the people of this city and the entire world. "We, the American presidents, are coming to Berlin because it is our duty to speak to you here in this place. I must confess that we come here for another reason, as we are familiar with the historical significance of this city, a symbol of freedom and overwhelmed by so much courage and determination. Directly behind me, the wall frames the free sector of the city as part of a vast division that spans the entire continent. Here in front of the Brandenburg Gate, every German must realize that they live separately from their immediate neighbors. President Weizsäcker once said that the German question will remain open as long as the Brandenburg Gate is closed. As long as we accept the existence of this wall, not only will the German question remain unresolved, but also the desire for freedom for all mankind. These days, the people of the Soviet Union are beginning to realize how important freedom can be for them. There is a new policy of reform and opening up. Political prisoners are being released and there are increasing signs of fundamental change within the Soviet Union. We expressly welcome this political reorganization and believe that human freedom and world peace can only be guaranteed through joint efforts for peace and disarmament. Just an actor. Ronald Reagan continues his speech at the Brandenburg Gate. There is an unmistakable signal from the Soviets to demonstrate clearly their will for peace and disarmament. Secretary General Gorbachev, if you seek peace, prosperity and liberalization, come to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down the wall. Mr. Gorbachev, I personally invite you to join me in reuniting the east and west halves of this city so that all Berliners can benefit, a city of global significance. One last word at the end of my speech. Since I've been here, I've been reading and trying to understand the reasons for all the demonstrations. I would like to say one thing to all the demonstrators. Have you ever asked yourself what form of government you long for so that you can do exactly what you are doing? Thank you all from the bottom of my heart and I wish you God's blessings.